Hi, this is the Tempter podcast where we discuss embedded Linux, IoT development, and anything else we might find interesting. Your hosts today are Khem Raj and Cliff Brait. How you doing, Khem?
Hey Cliff, I'm doing fine. How
Good.
about you?
Yeah, pretty well. So today we hoped to discuss kind of how the day-to-day development in the Yo distribution works. What does the release process look like? What does the testing strategy look like? And try to learn a little more how we do these things, why we do them, and how they can maybe help you in your product development. So to get started, Khem, what does your day-to-day development in Yo look like? You know, what's your typical operations you do often? And
Right. So your distro, we basically starting off of various ways that I use it as vehicle for various things in my day work. One of them is as a Meta Open Embedded maintainer. I have daily set of patches that come my way. So I use Yo as a test vehicle for those. And besides that, we also have a bunch of CI jobs that we run on openembedded.org. And we use Yo there too for basically validating various architectures. We build world that tests all the layers that are hosted on openembedded.org Git repository, and then other parts of this that I also use Yo for doing new hardware bring-ups, and so some part of it is done doing that. And the third thing that I also run tests on the device. So I do like a semi-auto testing, so to speak, on some of the SBCs. So these are some of the use cases that I have. So on given day, on this, we basically work on, either one, two, or all of them most of the time.
yeah, great. So that's very interesting. So just to recap, you use it for your open source as a maintainer. You use it as a test bed for that, and for new hardware bring up, and for testing the open embedded project in general. So what's an example of some new hardware you've been working on lately?
Oh yeah, so I've been working on this new Beagle 5, which is a RISC-V based. So I got it a week or so ago, and so we are currently working on a BSP to bring up this on Open Embedded, and I'm basically, we have Meta RISC-V as part of udistros, so this is being added to Meta RISC-V, and so naturally I'm using the Yo workflow to bring it up, and it has been very helpful because there are a couple of other developers who have patches in there as well. So when I built my images, we were seeing segfaults on one profile, which is glibc based profile. And so because of Yo distro, because we have this Yo profiles, I was able to test several combinations very quickly. So, it says, hey, sys5 init glibc is failing. Let's try systemd glibc. Oh, that fails too. Okay, let's try use like muscle and sys5 init. That works, right? And okay, so we have a working combination. Now let's go back and see what's going wrong with glibc. So can we create a very small init system and say, okay, let's try busybox init and glibc. And all I have to do was change a single variable, like yo_profile. And I was able to build these systems fairly quickly. Within 5-6 hours, I had like 6 different profiles tested out, and problem sort of like narrowed down a little bit. And that was very valuable. So right now I'm still debugging the underlying problem, but because it happens at early boot, so not like regular debug tools are not at my disposal.
Sure.
So it really helped with that.
That's great. So what you're saying is Yo actually helps you be more efficient at some of these other tasks. It's not really a distribution for the sake of a distribution.
Mm-hmm.
It solves real problems, and like you said, it allows you to iterate quickly through
Mm-hmm.
a set of different setups. And really, when you're debugging, complex systems like this with huge stacks of software, really all you can do is isolate the problem and try different things and then isolate it to a component. So what you're describing is how you use the
Right.
profiles in Yo to do that. So yeah, appreciate that example. That helps a lot. So in the GitHub Yo distribution, in that space, organization space, there's a whole bunch of repositories, and some of them are mirrors of other upstream repositories like Meta OE,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different meta layers, and I think even OE core,
Mm-hmm.
if I have that right.
Yep.
So why do we mirror those repositories, and how does that process work?
Yeah, excellent point. Actually, the one of the aspects is I'm a big fan of mono repos, and I want to maintain the modularity and yet be, a single view. It just is more efficient in my mind, and I think that's essentially it shouldn't be that you merge everything into one, but their properties should still be separate, but your view should be one. And that's what we do in your distro with Git submodules. Now, all the submodules are meta layers in many cases, and we basically mirror them onto our GitHub on your distro for a couple of reasons. One reason is that we want to use upstream as much as possible, but then we might have patches that we haven't yet upstreamed, but we need them in your distro until they're upstream. So we can accept those patches into our repositories, into the uh, into the mirrored branches that we have, and we can easily then work upstream. So basically, the your users can have a good experience of using those patches, testing them out while we work them to get included into the respective layer upstream. So it gives you that continuity. The second reason is because the layered architecture that Yocto project has introduced into Open Embedded is meaning that when these layers are moving in their own life, there's something has to put them together and test them together and make sure what works with what. And your distro is actually finding faults or finding bugs or finding build issues or what have you in these layers because somebody updated Mesa in the core layer, and that might break a Raspberry Pi Mesa case. It will only get noticed very late once like it's up in core and then somebody tests those images. Now when you test it, the commit has already gone in core, so it takes a time either to fix it, either send a patch or maybe revert the patch or what have you, but until then you have to either carry those changes locally or you have to have mechanisms to undo those changes. So what we do in Yo is basically if you're a Yo user, you will never have our master branch broken because of that. And so I want to make it clear that we don't fork. So we always stay with upstream. Most of our layers are actually straight out of upstream master because we update at a regular basis. So we still have a few time in between we can work upstream in those projects and get things fixed for us. And that has been working so far so good. But in many cases, we have had patches that we are carrying, in the past, in specifically in OE core and other layers, where those patches were deemed not useful upstream, but they are useful to us. So so in that case, we basically give you that kind of insulation from these issues. The third thing is a redundancy. So a upstream repository may disappear, It may delete a branch for whatever reason. It may rebase a branch for whatever reason, and we may be left, stranded. So you might have a product out there that you're building, that you probably are using a Yo release which is 2 year old, and then you'll come back to me and say, hey, this branch has disappeared. It happens all the time on GitHub, right? And it says, oh, I have something. So you go like in the firefighting mode and try to do something. So in this case, we know what we have released, and we make sure that those branches stay. So we basically create these mirrors. But if upstream does these kind of activities, then we can take action and still keep our users chugging along.
That's very important because, in the product development I do, we maintain products for 5 and even up to 10 years on usually fairly old versions of open embedded. So, having some assurance that those dependencies will be around long term is very high value for those of us building products. So, yeah, that's great.
Right. Yeah. So the one thing that probably at some point I've thought of is to also provide a mirror for the sources. Essentially, the sources that are not available either on Open Embedded Mirror or the Yocto project mirror. We can provide a third, mirror, so to speak, for those kind of components. But yeah, haven't come around doing that yet.
Sure. And even to provide an easy mechanism where users could manage that themselves
Yes.
would be valuable too. So, because being able to always have access to your open source sources is really an important part of your open source strategy. So it's good to think through those things.
Yeah, I think we do have a example for own mirrors in your distro. So if you are using it for your products and in-house, you have a mechanism to have all the sources in-house, then you could take that template and adapt it to your source URIs, and off you go.
Sure. So the last, actually we have 2 more topics, the Yo testing strategy and kind of the release process. So the testing strategy, I know we have some CI stuff set up, and you've got a build client running. Can you describe that a little bit for us?
Yeah, it happens in the background, so not many people get to see it. Even I don't get to see what it's doing in the background. But because we use GitHub as our SCM system, so we basically use GitHub Actions for our CI, and at the back we have a server that has been graciously made available to me by ARM, and it's a AR64.
So we actually test on an ARM machine. We test Yocto on an ARM machine. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we build actually on this machine, and what you have. So there's a pipeline of jobs it does. So what you will see is we have basically created this rules for our branches on your distro. So when there is a patch that somebody posts or I update something, I usually push it out into as a pull request or something to your distro, and it triggers on pulls, and it basically goes in. It does 3 things. It builds a bunch of Yo images. It builds Yo SDK image, Yo Qt5 image, debug image. And then not only that, but it actually runs the tests on the emulator. So the image it has built, it basically uses the great testing that Yocto project also does on emulator, basically automatically running the p-tests, which are package tests in an emulator environment.
So is that in QEMU, or what kind of emulator is that?
That's right. It is on QEMU.
Okay.
And and we use QEMU ARM 64 because we want to use KVM, because
Mhm.
these tests are very heavy, and if you don't have KVM, then they can take like 12 hours to maybe even days.
Oh my.
um, yeah,
I've
so
been hearing a lot of good things about KVM lately, that people are actually running Windows in it on their Linux machines and not using VirtualBox anymore. So it seems to be
mm,
a very, very good technology. So yeah, that's good.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's very useful for us. So as a result, we can get our tests run in less than 2 hours.
Mhm.
And if if you look at it, also publishes the the results in the end. So you get a nice table of all the results that it has tabulated for you. Uh, if it fails, then it fails the build, and then that means it fails the whole pipeline.
So basically, if we ever merge to master in the Yo distribution, it will have passed that test. It will
That's
have
right.
built for a number of machines. It'll have run the tests. We'll have built a number of images, including some fairly complex ones like Qt 5 and
Mhm.
all the debug packages.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's great. So the master is typically in pretty good shape in the Yo
Mhm.
distribution because of this. Yeah.
Yeah, and I owe that to the CI really, because
Hmm.
we respect it, and to the extent that we don't merge things, even if we know that there's a known problem, we hold on to those and we try to fix the problems. In many cases, the problems are like, as we were talking earlier, where we say, there is a patch that went into the core layer, needs a corresponding patch in another layer, and so we wait for that patch to be ready, and in many cases upstreamed
Hmm.
before we merge the pull. But if we can't merge it, or if upstream rejects it, or there are those kind of situations, we still have our masters to try it out and
Right.
have it. But it never happens so far. We are able to merge them upstream and go forward.
Sure. The last question for today is what does the release process for the Yo distribution look like?
Excellent point. So we toyed with several aspects of it. We basically did an LTS that was Yocto 3.1 based, done well. But then of late, starting 2021, we have moved to a monthly cadence. So our releases look like year dot month. So for example, the May release would be 2021.5,
Hmm.
and we basically are so far so good. So we have made 5 releases this year, and hopefully hoping to continue. We basically feed off of master at this point. So we basically feed off of master of various layers. And master is a subjective term. In some cases, master is stable to a certain extent that it's just called master, right? But basically, we are on the latest of their release, of their master branch releases, and and then we basically run all these tests, and in the end, what we do is we make a release, we create tags, which basically you can check out and you can branch off from there and use your own product distributions. You're very welcome to do that. We also create a change log, which is actually documenting all the changes that went into different layers, including the Yo policies if we changed any in that month. And so all that is nicely documented in our change log, which is actually an inspiration that I think you brought up a long time ago for a different project. So we adopted this in here, and we have been very very happy to follow it, because at the end of the month we get to see what all changes have happened, not only in the Yo distro world but also in the Yocto world.
Sure. So how do you keep track of all that? This change log is dozens of lines long, maybe 30, 40 lines long. So how do you keep track of that over a course of a month?
So I have tools. So whenever I'm basically updating these submodules, the tool gives me the commits that went into
Hmm.
the tip that we have and the tip that we are going to, and then I peruse through them, and I literally look at them and see what is worth noting, And in many cases there are like recipe upgrades, and and that's understood, but some recipes are more more equal than others, right? So for example, if you upgrade glibc or if you upgrade compiler, those things don't go unnoticed.
Sure.
But if you upgrade a leaf package, we may still miss, or that may not be as important, but the core pieces are picked up. And basically I also kind of compress it together, so I don't have to be as elaborate, and we can kind of like give more summary of what that change was.
Yeah, that's very interesting because this change log is really not specific to Yo. Most of it comes from just the upstream projects, Meta
Mm-hmm.
OE and OE Core and all those. So it's a generally useful
Mm-hmm.
bit of information that we have somebody like you that glances through all the commits coming through, pulls out what's notable and interesting, and gives us a nice, concise list of what's going on. So,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
it's even helpful for me at the end of the month when I look at it, and then I have forgotten what has gone in that
Mm-hmm.
month, and I also look at it and say, oh wow, okay,
Yeah.
these are the changes we are pushing out this month. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's I myself have become ardent fan of it, so I do it regularly myself
Sure.
because I find it useful for my own purposes as well.
Okay. Well, that's anything else you'd like to add today, or?
Yeah, so I think you'll also see there is a code name that we
Mm-hmm.
choose for our
Sure.
monthly releases.
How could I
So,
forget?
because our theme is on the name of sheets, and so
Mm-hmm.
so we pick a nice breed, and then we name it with that.
Yeah,
It's
those are not nice names. They're definitely stand out and seem to fit the project well. So very good.
mhm. And so yeah, try it out, and my effort here has been mainly to also provide a framework for others to CI their systems
Mm-hmm.
and do a wider testing of the ecosystem. And because when you're building larger projects, you have packages coming from many layers, and we don't test certainly all of them, but we do test bunch of layers which are very common everywhere. And I hope that it's being valuable, because a lot of developers upstream for these layers say, hey, how do you find these problems
Mm-hmm.
way ahead of time? And the reason is we have all this testing happening, and it just falls on my face, and then either I send a patch or I report it based upon how much time I have.
Sure. That's great. Well, I appreciate all your efforts there, Khem, and it definitely makes for a nice system for building embedded Linux images. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, please let us know what you think about this. Ask questions if you have any. Forward this on to others who might be interested. So appreciate any feedback.
Yep. Thank you,
Okay.
Pete.
Yep. Until next time. Take care.
Bye bye.